Look at verse 15 and 16. I just want to go over this in closing. So Paul spends the first 2+ chapters talking about why he is qualified to give us the pure gospel, his frustration that people are believing a distorted view of the gospel, and then in verse 15 of chapter 2, he just quickly explains the gospel. Now, he's going to use some words here, and you have to know what the words mean. Like, if I don't explain the words, you won't understand the meaning of it, right? So, like, I'll give you an example. Years ago, my son Daniel, I picked him up from school, and he was like, yo, I got in big trouble today. And I was like, what happened? He was like, so I was in computer lab, and I was in class, and grabbed this mouse, and I just started taping it up. And I was like, what? You just grabbed a mouse? He's like, yeah. I was like, bro, that's so dark, bro. And I was like, that's like, why are you doing that? Like, I had been watching like Netflix documentaries. Like, I know where this goes. You know what I'm saying? So I was like all messed up. And I was like, dude, like, we got to talk, bro. Like, you can't do that. Do you have an empathetic bone in your body? Like, what is wrong with you? And he's like, I don't understand why it's that big of a deal. I'm like, okay, like, what is going on? And so I was like, dude, it's a living creature. He looked at me like, huh? He's like, no, the mouse of the computer, like the mouse, the computer. I said, you got in trouble for it? Yeah, because like if you put it there, it doesn't work anymore. And like, I was messing with people. And I was like, you got in trouble for that, but you're not a murderer. Okay, cool. All right, so that's good. You had to understand like the word, what was actually being said, right, in order to understand what he was saying. And there's words in here. There's words in verse 15 and 16 where he says, we ourselves are Jews by birth and not Gentile sinners, yet we know that a person is not justified by works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. So we also have believed in Christ Jesus in order to be justified by faith in Jesus Christ and not by works of the law, because by works of the law, no one will be justified. So there's 3 terms that he's just going in on right there. Justified, works of the law, faith. Justified, works of the law, faith. This is the gospel. The gospel is, 1, you are justified. Here's what the word justified means. Declared innocent. You're not innocent. You're not innocent. You're declared innocent. Do you see that there's a difference? You're not innocent, but you're declared innocent. And what justification does is it relooks at, right, why you're innocent. That's what it does. So, years ago, the example I gave years ago for this, there was a kid in high school in Cincinnati, and he's walking down the hall, and he sees some other dude, and as he's walking by, boom, he just decks him, literally drops his cat out cold, out of nowhere. Security comes running. The principal sees the whole thing happen, right? Comes over, principal grabs the kid who knocked him out, grabs him, puts him up against a locker, and he's like, that, and immediately says, you're expelled. Like, you are expelled, like, because he saw it with his own eyes and immediately made the call on the spot. He says, fine, expel me. Look in his pocket. Huh? Look in his pocket. They look in his pocket. He had a 22 millimeter. He says, I'm cool with you being expelled. I'm just glad everybody's alive. Do you see what happened? The event didn't change, but he was declared justified. It's looking at it from a different lens. The gospel is, yeah, you're a sinner. You're jacked up. Like Paul, you find yourself doing stuff you ought not to do, and you're like, I don't know why I do it. And then you find yourself not doing the things that you know you ought to do, and you're like, why? What's going on here? But thanks be to God that you are justified, because even though you were guilty of the actions, because of what Christ has done, it's looked at differently. It's called the great exchange. He gives his life for yours. The second term in here is works of the law. And what Paul is saying here is you cannot be justified by works of the law. If you ever are looking at the law and you ever think to yourself that you've done anything good in yourself that deserves God's acceptance, that means you're just not looking clearly enough. Because for every one thing that you do that deserves God's acceptance, there's 1,000 things behind it that don't, right? And the way that Paul describes it is if you're or James actually says it like this: if you try to uphold even one iota, even one element of the law, you better be careful, because now you got to carry the whole thing, and you can't do it. And so you're justified not because of the works of the law, but by faith. Every one of you in here has put your faith somewhere. Hear that. Every one of you has put your faith somewhere, in something. There isn't a belief system in the world that isn't somehow rooted in faith. I don't care how smart you think you are. I don't care how much knowledge you think you have. You will never have enough knowledge to know with certainty that what you believe about the existence of God and Jesus Christ is completely accurate, or lack thereof of a belief in that is completely accurate. It will take faith. People are like, like there's a faith element to everything we believe. When you get on a plane, you don't know how it works. You walk by faith, not by sight, don't you? Right? You could be an atheist that doesn't believe in the existence of God. But there's a lot of scientists out there that would say, the more I study science, the more I'm like, there's a divine creator. So like no matter what it is, there's an element of faith. And Paul is like, you're justified not through works of the law, but by faith. So my question for you is, where is your faith? Who is your faith in? What is your faith in? And is whatever your faith in stable enough to carry it? Jesus is. He rose from the grave. He's alive and well. So I'd encourage you to put your faith in Jesus today. That's it. That's it. Put your faith in Jesus. It's pretty simple, okay?